John, it's been about 18 months since we last chatted about initiative business, if you like. But we've had a new project which has just been published called The Battling for the Soul of Education. I just wanted to ask you about why we've now got this new initiative and kind of what's been happening between now and then.
Yeah, well, I need to go back really as to why has there been an 18-month gap. Because we had put in a lot of effort a couple of years ago into producing the script for a television programme, or 6 television programmes, entitled The Brilliance of Their Minds. And it was an attempt to capture the public's understanding of actually how wonderful is the structure of the human brain and how geared that is to helping children, starting not by being taught, but actually by finding things out for themselves, and how, if we understood the functioning of the brain properly, we wouldn't end up with having schools of the shapes that we've got at the moment. Now, it was quite a sophisticated task. It was fascinating. Tony Little, the headmaster of Eton, was going to be the overview, and we're going to film across a lot of different places. And then, 18 months ago, the way in which the television company came back with this, we thought was so trivial that we just had to break away from it. And so we broke away from that because what we were trying to say is this is not about school reform. It's about educational transformation. It means thinking about things in a very, very different way. And as we started working on that, we put this document together, gradually put that document together, suddenly we realized actually this was about a battle, battling for the soul of education. And so the document, which has just gone out to several thousand people all the way around the world, is written to address the issue not just of English education, but how formal education systems, many of which are actually based on an English model, have been stuck with starting with how do you organise the classroom. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not about organising the classroom. It's about something deeper than that. And I'm taken back a long, long way to when in 1979, as a young headmaster, I just put in what became Britain's first ever fully computerised classroom with a terminal for every child. None of us really quite knew what was going to happen. In the back of my mind, I had a very simple model. I find writing by hand very tedious. I'm not a very good speller, and therefore I could never quite work out whether it was an A, an E, or a B, or a D, so my handwriting was awful. And I'd always been penalised by this, and I'd loathed rewriting things all out. And then my secretary said, but if you had a word processor, you could just type it in. And I started thinking about that, and she showed me it, and I did a few letters like that. And I then thought, what would happen if every child could use a word processor in any subject? And that was the origin of putting in the Open Terminal Computer Centre, Terminal for Everybody. The end of the first week it was there. There was a crisis. I had a very young, very enthusiastic English teacher who burst into my study last thing on the Friday afternoon and said, "Headmaster, I've been insulted." And she pulled herself out to full height. I thought, gosh, there's a real problem here. So I said, quite fine, well, what's the problem? She said, one of my pupils in my class, I'm seeing him on Wednesday next week, I gave him an essay to do to hand in next Wednesday. And do you know what he's done? He's been into this thing called a computer centre, he's typed it up, and he's given me what he says is his first draft. And he wants me to take it away over the weekend, give me comments on it, and then hand it back to him on Monday so that he can cheat. Literally, she said cheat, just like that. Cheat by incorporating my ideas into his text. And then she gave me what she thought was the withering exclamation. And, headmaster, which one do I mark? The one which was his own work, or the one he cheated on? So it was a Friday afternoon, I needed to think rather quickly. So I said, let me phone the chairman of the Cambridge Examinations Board, because they're the ones that really set the pace. They're the ones who set the exams. And the chairman was very polite over the phone. He said, well, why don't you come to lunch on Tuesday? So I went to lunch. We had a lovely lunch, talked about lots of different things, but at the end of lunch we hadn't resolved anything. So I said, well, tell me, Chairman, what do we do? He said, I really don't know. We will wait for government to tell us which way to go. And that was 1979. And the teaching profession has never regained the initiative here. It's just been sitting, waiting for politicians to look at one aspect of this and not another aspect of it. And I put that together with what is a major part of Battling for the Soul, is the study between England and Finland. England and Finland had almost identical systems in 1945. England saw themselves as the victors, the Finns were conquered. The English said, we're doing pretty well, we don't need to change very much. The Finns said, we want to get hold of the very best ideas we can, and we'll restructure, we'll redesign it, not just around a conventional classroom. We may not even have very many classrooms. We'll design it around how do children best learn. And of course, most people listening to this broadcast will know that in the recent surveys from OECD and elsewhere, poor England is pretty low down in the charts. America's even lower down. And who's on top? OECD charts consistently show Finland, of all the European and American English-speaking countries, right at the very top. And guess what? Their children don't spend as many hours in a classroom as our children do. There is, as some of your listeners will know, an exception to this, because actually the Southeast Asian countries have got so good at teaching their pupils to pass the tests that by knowing how to pass the tests, they actually get very high scores on the PISA results. But they only do that through memory skill, not through logic. And so Battling for the Soul is actually saying to people, what is education really all about? And if you can think about that, then you can begin to understand what you need to do for children, and of course what you need to do for teachers, and what you need to do for parents. So that's what the document's about.